I feel my skin connected with the universe. I can turn on the light of the moon or the sun from my heart.
Thank you so much all for coming out on this beautiful winter day.
I feel my body shining for the rest of us. From beginning to end, there's no doubt on my mind. I feel free now. Oh, let me wake up, wake up, wake up from my darkness and fear. Wake up, wake up from the demons within. Wake up, wake up from the wounds of my heart. Wake up, wake up from the silence inside. Wake up to the way of the light. Wake up to the meaning of life. Wake up to the wall inside me and break it to pieces. Wake up to the eyes of the world. Wake up to my true emotions. Wake up to the fears of the past and break them in pieces.
Have required annual dues. Some number of those.
I feel my body floating through the open sky. No more poor little me, no more victim of life. I feel strong now. I see the space between us full of little lights. One to one we are looking out for who lives in us. Oh, let me wake up, wake up, wake up from my darkness and fear. Wake up from the demons within. Wake up from the wounds of my heart. Wake up from the silence inside. Wake up to the way of the light. Wake up to the meaning of life. Wake up to the wall inside me and break it to pieces. Wake up to the eyes of the world. Wake up to my true emotions. Wake up to the fears of the past and break them in pieces. Wake up to the way of the light. Wake up to the meaning of life. Wake up to the wall inside me. Break it to pieces. Wake up to the eyes of the world. Wake up to my true emotions. Wake up to the fears of the past and break them in pieces. Break them in pieces.
Chelsea, Amanda, Marie, Philip, Stephen, Laura, and Wendy. Thank you so much for being in our office every week or subbing as needed. We are looking for someone every other Wednesday, 12 to 3. Talk to me if you're interested. Some of what you do in the office is perform orientations. So it's a great way to meet new members. Laura is one of those office staff I just mentioned as a sub. So great way to meet new members and engage with current and new members. So talk to us. We are also looking for someone to do a regular orientation every evening, or sorry, not every evening, one evening a month regularly. So we'd love to find that person. Right now, all of our orientations are happening during office hours, which is challenging for people who work a standard work week. So we'd love to have like a monthly orientation available. Either a weeknight or a weekend. We've also done a lot of outreach for new member recruitment. Gabe has been responsible for a lot of that with tabling, giving presentations, getting our brochures into the community, our green cards. Word of mouth is really one of the best ways. We encourage all of you to keep talking it up. Grab some of those green cards and brochures and take them with you and talk about why you love the time trade. That's one of the best ways we get it. We get new members. We also have an Brattleboro time trader, Kate Traeger, who wasn't able to be here today, but she keeps us in the spotlight on Brattleboro every week. And we have a Facebook and Twitter social media person, Kira King, who I'd like to thank, who's not here. But those are ways also that we keep our name and face out there. I'd love to thank the Potluck Committee, all three of whom are here. Philip Colbeck, the current chairperson, Laura Evans, and Donna K. Brooks. They're also looking for new members, and we'd love to have new input. Most of you have been to a potluck and hopefully enjoyed yourself. They happen every month, which is pretty awesome. And they're a really great way to meet other members and try to make connections, to make exchanges, eat good food, socialize. Sometimes there's some business that we talk about, but more often it's just a social time to sort of meet and greet. This next potluck is February 19th at Brattleboro Savings and Loan Bank, 5:30. So hope you can come. If you want to host a potluck, check in with one of the potluck committee people. Summer potlucks we like to have outside, so if you have a good outdoor space. We might go to Tad Montgomery's house one day. We've tried 2 years in a row and the weather has forced us inside, but we may try again. So talk to a potluck committee member if you want to host. We have a newsletter that's continuing to come out 2 times a month over email. Thank you to Lita for continuing to collate it and edit it and get it into HTML format. I know a lot of you have sent some emails about trying to get pictures in there and make it a little snazzier, but there's just some challenges with linking our software up and merging that with a MailChimp program or something else, and we may do that one day. If you're the person who wants to spend some time each month making that happen, we would love it. So we're open to that as a possibility. That's sort of tapped out where we are in terms of newsletter resources. So talk to me if you're interested in maybe moving into a MailChimp picture, a little bit snazzier format. Also, if you have success stories to share, please email those to me or Lita. Those are one of the highlights, I think, of our newsletter, because then Patsy's going to email me as soon as she leaves. Because you get to read about why time trade is so great, and it often can inspire you to reach out and make a trade because you know that it can work, and you read about these really great connections. So that's one of my favorite parts of it. A little bit of the annual dues update from last year. Like I said, mandatory dues started in 2012, at the end of the year, November. So we've had over a year now of that. And over the course of this year, we had 75% of our members renew. So 177 out of 239. For me, I feel like that's a huge success. 75% of people who are in time trade think it works for them and want to continue. Last year, which was our first year of mandatory dues, that number was 45%. So that's a huge change. And like I said, we had some members who thought it was a great idea but hadn't really engaged with it and let their membership lapse. And now we really have a chunk of members who are really committed and engaged in trading and renewing, and I think that says a lot. We also had 139 new members last year, which was up from 85 the year before. And that's like some of our outreach efforts that Gabe has really taken on, and some of our bigger events, and then word of mouth. That averages about 11 or 12 a month, but there's a big range. Last month we only had 3, and then in September we had almost 30. So there is a really big range. Our average dues payment is up to $25.50. We will be talking more about that later in the meeting, but that is even up from last year when the average was about $20.50. So it's up $5 per member. We appreciate all of the dues that you do pay in whatever sliding scale we have, and it really allows us to do the work that we do. So we will be talking about that more, but thank you to all. And we still continue to have about 10% of our members who don't pay dues. because it's more of a financial burden. And so they do service work in lieu of dues. So last year there were 33 members who took us up on that opportunity. And so again, that's about 10% of our membership. And we would continue to have that as an option if the dues policy were to change. The last thing I will mention is our gift bags. And we have at least one member of our gift bag team. She's been sewing and sewing and sewing and sewing for over a year, and creates, I'll show you, beautiful gift bags like this in 3 sizes. We have the small, the medium, and the larger wine bottle size. And that's Shirley Ridgway, and she is here. So thank you so much for doing that. We have also Jan Drexler, who joins her, and Enza Putignano, who helps. But we'd love more people to help sew, which often is at your own home, and people to distribute. Places like the Brattleboro Food Co-op, the Guilford Country Store, in Putney at the general store. So if you're interested, talk to us. It's a great fundraiser. People love them, and they're here today if you would like to purchase them. Do you have a question?
And that's in exchange for time hours.
It is. All of the people that I've mentioned so far and thanked all do what they do for time credit hours. So we, as a time trade, couldn't function without all that member support. They get the hours for what they do, but a lot of the times they don't need the hours, so they're doing it because they want to see the time trade succeed. So thank you so much. I think Gabe will talk for another minute or two about, release the software.
Yes.
Awesome.
There are some exciting developments, some potential collaborations with United Way and Sevka, which would be really exciting. Yeah, I guess the only thing, definitely like Abby mentioned, our relationship with Omega Optical is incredibly important. I don't know if any of you have noticed from time to time we post requests to work with Omega. I encourage anyone who has the capacity, the opportunity to help nurture that relationship by helping Omega. It would be awesome. We're deeply indebted to them. And so yeah, Alan sent us a little report on the software. A number of members have noticed that there are expired ads popping up randomly, kind of haunting us. And a number of bugs in the Community Weaver software, although it's been improved a lot of these bugs are kind of here to stay until we transition to Community Weaver 3, which we're looking at approaching quite soon. They've just released the beta test and it's looking good, and it looks like there's some opportunity to try it out. I don't know, do we have anywhere we post how people can, I guess we'll put something in the newsletter. We'll send a link to how you can check it out. We're going to wait and see how it works for other time banks transition, because it's change. It'll be whole new software. It'll look different, but it should be a lot better. And we'll try to make sure that we do it at a time when we're ready and we have enough members who are fluent with the system and can really help anyone else use it, so that's not a really difficult change.
Hi. So we're very excited that we now have 501c3 nonprofit status, which was a few years in the making, and it took us a whole year to figure out that that's what we needed to apply for. And so we had to wait for a little while, but we finally got it. Yay! So we're very happy about that. And that it will enable us to be more independent, to apply for grants, like larger grants, and to offer tax-deductible donations for those who would like to deduct their donation. Maybe spread our reach to more people for donations. The board has become a real working board, moving Brattleboro Time Trade forward and expanding our reach and abilities. We had our first annual working retreat facilitated by Calvin Dane, who I saw come in. There's Calvin over there. Thank you, Calvin. Which really helped build a cohesiveness among the board members. It was an important retreat. It was very, very helpful for us in terms of working together. In February, we hired Gabriel Weiss to replace me as coordinator, to work alongside Abby. And he's done a great job with outreach. So thank you, Gabriel. We appreciate all your work. We have a more formalized buddy system, which now consists of 6 people, who, including Catherine, who 7 altogether. Catherine has oriented our buddies to be helpful to members who need help with the software and other aspects of time training. Let's see. Oh, we have grown, well, like Abby already said, we've grown our membership by almost 50% to over 300 time trade members. And the board has created teams led by the board members. And Catherine put a list of the board teams over there, and I'll just read them briefly. We have and members are welcome and invited to please come participate on these teams to help us do the work of the time trade. So we have the events coordinator team, the new member orientation team, policies and procedures, communication and social media, team coordination and oversight, fundraising and grant writing, strategic plan and mission. And
so last but not least, over the last year, we have really increased our outreach in the community. We've staffed outreach tables at the farmers market, both here and in Townsend. Strolling of the heifers, we've been visible, and we even last year had a board-led, or excuse me, a Brattleboro time trade panel with Edgar Kahn, who was the founder of the Time Bank. In the community itself, we've been visible at the community organizations, Rotary Club, SEVCA, public libraries, and that Alan Baker has gotten to a number of them in Wilmington, Jacksonville, and Dover while he was here. And we've had feature articles in the All You magazine, the Commons and Green Energy Chimes, which again is another way of getting our word out.
Fundraising efforts. We had our first membership appeal for special donations this past year. Our annual Welcome Center bake sale in September, which is always a wonderful fundraiser. It's a lot of fun, as well as bringing in a fair amount of money. We had our first annual contra dance at the Stone Church in December, welcoming both adults and children. That was so much fun that we decided that we want to continue doing that. Thank you, Mary Diane, for organizing that huge effort.
Very fun.
And we received a grant from the Vermont Community Foundation. It was a small and inspiring grant of about $2,080 to support our scholarship fund to help some members with dues for this year, for 2015. And let's see, what else? We have held successful fundraisers at the River Garden, which was a CSA and gardening event, Maple and Mud Fest, a raffle at the Strolling of the Heifers gallery walk, and then the bake sale already mentioned. We also designed signature Brattleboro Time Trade organic cotton t-shirts, which are featured right over here. And we are selling those. They're for sale today, $15 a piece.
This kind of reviews in numbers what had been reported before, but member dues, $6,800, contributions in fundraising, and so we had a total income of $12,613. So this just kind of makes it easier to visualize. By income, member dues make up 54% of what we bring in, and we, through the dues policy, hope to increase that so that dues can basically maintain the paid staff. So this is again a donut of expenses, personnel making up 85% slightly less than 12,000. And then various office things, fundraising expenses. Next. So what we had this year is 13,800 in expenses, 12,600 basically in income. So we had approximately on the books a loss of about $1,200. We expect sort of retroactively that the Spring Forward fundraising and the grant will pretty much make that go away, and I'll show you a comparison of the last 3 years in a minute. So this is a proposal for 2015 for a budget of about $15,000 that we wish to make basically balanced. If our income is higher, then we have more funds available for outreach, for development. Next. Basically, this was 2012, so we had a total budget then of $4,000, and we weren't paying any staff, so this was just whatever the office cost. They got paid in hours. Then 2013, dues more than doubled. Fundraising increased, and we started paying coordinators. So we had pretty much a double the budget, 8,000. This year we're up to the budget spending part, 13,008, and then next year, so we're over 3 times our budget, and I think our effectiveness as well. And so this estimate in the dues includes some projections from the dues policy that we're going to vote on later. I think I have one more slide. Okay, so basically the payroll part, could be our budget of 15,000. So if we divided that by 300 members currently, more or less 10% is Abby had reported pay their dues in other ways other than cash. But so it works out more or less to $50 a year or $420 a month. And as we increase membership, probably we will need to increase the hours that the staff coordinators work. So I think somewhere between $50 a year and $60 a year average would in fact pay for time trade, so that any fundraising, grants, donations could be used to help us grow, to help us reach out to other groups, to help provide services to other groups, which is in a large measure what we see happening. And that's any questions? All right, thank you.
So I'm here to talk about the Spring Ahead annual fundraiser, which looks like this. The folks have been seeing the poster around. So what I've been doing is working with students at SIT, where I teach marketing. So their challenge this year was to come up with a way that a local nonprofit can raise 20% of its budget in 4 hours. And what we did was come up with the idea of an annual fundraiser. So it's called the first annual Spring Forward Time Trade Extravaganza. And the board has been amazing, and the coordinators in working with us through this process. We've been working on this since August. It's gone through many transformations. What we're at now is an event that's going to be taking place March 6th, right during Gallery Walk. So we used a lot of really cool tricks to help make this be a successful event, like partnering with Gallery Walk. So then we get in the guide, and we get on the map, and we have a guaranteed audience. We also have the Arts Council of Windham County needed some wall space to hang their art. We said, come on by. So they helped pay part of the cost of renting the River Gallery or garden. And they're also going to be bringing in probably about 300 of their own people as families come to look at their kids' art. So by being able to partner with folks, we're able to already start raising the funds that we need before the event even starts. So that's how, you can get 20% of the budget in 4 hours. It's really not 4 hours. We've already had some generous sponsors paying into this. We've raised about half of our goal of $3,000 so far, and that'll be for the 2015 year. Brattleboro Ford Subaru is sponsoring the entire event, as in they get a big banner out on the street. So they're paying $500 for their sponsorship, plus they're giving us a bunch of oil changes and car repairs for the silent auction. And then Brattleboro Savings and Loan paid $600 to be able to sponsor the music stage, where we're going to have the SNAS playing and 2 of our time trade members, Jesse Lepkoff, Lucilena More. So we'll have music going on. We're going to have food. I think we'll have Dosage Kitchen there, which will be really cool. And lots of games and activities. And one of the goals we have is to get some more members, and of course raise money through dues, raise money through the silent auction. So anybody that has things to clean out of their house, or talents, or crafts, or anything they want to be thrown into that silent auction, Abby's going to be coordinating that, so let her know. And we're going to be doing lots of stuff to get ready. One thing we have, social media, getting people involved, and also getting people to understand and engage in what is time trade. So the idea is there's going to be a lot of people coming into the River Gallery who might not be members, okay? But we want to qualify them and make sure they know what they're getting into. So if they sign up to be members, they become active, good members. We have this little list to C&S wholesale grocers for free, printed up 500 posters for us, and great thanks to Kathy Carr, who's been our amazing graphic designer. Everyone could grab a bunch of posters. We have millions of these, and just start hanging them up in the community. We have a sign-up sheet. So, yeah, how's that sound? Good?
Tradition of taking a public domain song and changing the words. This song initially was a song called Diddy Wah Diddy by a guy named Blind Blake. And initially it was a song about sex. So we've taken a song about sex and we've turned it into a song about money, which are 2 of the subjects you cannot discuss at a New England dinner table. And these are covering it all, right? So here we go. This is called Economic Words. Now when I say the economic word, I want you to say it back to me, okay? That's pretty easy. Here we go. There's a great big mystery, and it sure is worrying me. It's all these economic words.
Economic words.
Economic words.
Economic words.
Won't someone please tell me what these economic words mean? The big banks made lots of bad loans. Millions of people lost their homes. They call it massive foreclosure.
Massive foreclosure.
Massive foreclosure.
Massive foreclosure.
Won't someone please tell me what massive foreclosure means? The bank's balance sheets were a sight to see, so they sold the loans to you and me. They called it government bailout.
Government bailout.
Government bailout.
Government bailout.
Won't someone please tell me what government bailout means? If they want cash in the economy, they could just give it to you and me. They call it stimulus package.
Stimulus package.
Stimulus package.
Stimulus package.
Won't someone please tell me what stimulus package means? The Federal Reserve was out of ideas. They needed a way to stop the fears. They called it quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing.
Won't someone please tell me what quantitative easing means? Bernanke said we'll buy that debt, so we did it, and they haven't stopped yet. They call it quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing. So now for your crash course in 21st century economics. I liked what Obama said the other day about middle class economics. Doesn't that sound better than trickle down economics? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about sustainable economics and resilient economics, which are two new fields that we all need to understand a whole lot better. That song's also a little bit about why we need a new field of economics. And if what I say today is something that triggers your interest and you're interested in studying it more, the Public Banking Institute, where I work now, the only job I've ever been fired into, interestingly enough, for those of you who know the story, has started a new Economy Academy. It's an online educational resource. Members of the Public Banking Institute can participate in the classes for free, and this is going to be the basis for a class I'll be giving soon on community economic resilience. So don't worry if you don't get it all right away. For a very small membership fee, you can join and have a 5-week-long class on this if you're interested. So let's start. What do we mean by sustainable? Anybody? Got a definition? Come on, this is participatory. If you haven't gotten that already. Sustainable, what do we mean by that?
It lasts.
Lasts, that's a good one. Okay. What else?
Renewable.
Renewable, right, regenerative even, sure. Okay, so click ahead. The official definition came from a World Commission on Environment back in the 1980s, where they got all the really smart economists together with all the really smart environmentalists, and they came up with the definition of sustainable development, which is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So meeting needs is an important idea in sustainability, and the idea is that we can meet our needs today, for all the things we need, in a way that enhances the ability of our grandchildren to meet their needs. Okay, so next slide. Now this basically comes down to a very simple system. You've got to click. We all have these needs, and they are not just basic material needs. We have social needs and governance needs and economic needs, and we meet those needs, keep clicking, by taking action, okay? So if you're here and you need a ride, you'll usually hop in your car, but if you're in one of the informal settlements in Africa and you need a ride, you'll either walk or you'll take a taxi or you'll ride a bike. Because the action we take depends on the capacity of our community resources to meet our needs, right? And that capacity in turn is informed, another click, by the basic regeneration rate of whatever that asset is. So the quick way to describe this is if you're harvesting a forest to meet your needs for lumber faster than that forest grows back again, you're doing it in an unsustainable way because you're stripping the capacity of its regenerative qualities. And that, in turn, one more click, will influence your ability to take action in the future. So this simple system is what we're talking about when we're talking about sustainability. Next slide. So there's 5 basic systems in every community, and each of these systems has its own capacities. One is the social systems, and these are the ones where we take care of our human and social development, our education systems, our healthcare systems. Governance systems help us resolve conflict, guarantee a level of equity. Equity is fundamentally a function of power, even though we tend to think of it in economic terms. Economic systems that help us with our means of exchange, like time trades. Value, ownership, labor, all of those systems are built and manufactured systems, so this is getting into our material needs. And finally, last but not least, our natural systems. The air we breathe, the water we drink, our basic life support. So these 5 systems are really important, and we need to understand all of their capacities if we're looking at how to make our community sustainable. Next slide. Now, what is resilience? Anybody? Does that mean the same thing as sustainability, or what? Is there a different meaning? Anybody?
Adapting to change?
Adapting to change, great definition. The formal definition in resiliency theory, which is something that's very interesting and worth studying if you're interested in this, is the capacity of a system to absorb disturbance or shocks, in other words, change, right? and reorganized while undergoing change so that it can still retain essentially the same function, structure, identity, and feedbacks. So those 4 pieces of the system need to stay in place for it to be a resilient system. It needs to be sort of the same. So when New Orleans suffered from Katrina, for example, and now their entire social economic makeup as a city has completely changed. Were they a resilient city under this definition? Not really, no. So the question arises, all right, what makes for a resilient city? How do you develop a resilient economy? What do we mean by that? Next slide. All right, so in order to be resilient, you need to have adaptive capacities. You need to be able to adapt to change. You know, if you don't have a lot of social safety nets in place and you have a disaster like Katrina that wipes out some of your low-income neighborhoods, you're not necessarily going to be very adaptive to that change. And they found a few things that tend to make for these adaptive capacities. One, that they're robust, so that they can work under a wide variety of circumstances. They don't need one very isolated condition to succeed. Another is that they're redundant. So you have a few different ways to do the same thing instead of just one way to do it. And redundancy is an important part of resiliency planning and an important part of emergency management planning if you have done some of that. And rapid. They need to be able to be deployed quickly. So something like, for example, when they were afraid of the solar storms that were going to wipe out our electric grid, which still might happen, by the way. The fact that those substations that would be affected by the rapid influx of electromagnetic radiation that came in from the solar storms would take a manufacturing process about 5 years to replace them. That's not a rapid deployment. That means that those substations and the electric grid is not a very resilient entity. Moving on. So these system shocks are what we're talking about when we're talking about resilience. We want to be able to adapt and respond to system shocks and stay roughly the same as we were beforehand, right? Now what do we have that are shocks coming into our system now? Next slide. All right, we've got a bunch of them heading our way, just so you know, if you haven't studied this yet. Climate change, economic crisis, energy disruption, transportation problems, weather events, pandemic, species extinction. All of these things are some of the shocks that our current civilization is facing in the 21st century. And so in order to understand how to be resilient in light of all of this, we need to understand something about resilient economics. Next slide. So climate change, this is just the global mean surface temperature from 1880 to now. It's going up. Next slide. I hope I don't have to convince anybody here of that. Economic crisis. Here's just the US gross debt from 1910 to 2010. Now this burgeoning debt, of course, is linked to our monetary system that has a built-in growth imperative because of the fact that all money is issued as debt and we don't issue the interest at the same time we issue the debt, and so the debted money is always chasing more and more money to try and come out right. Energy disruption. This is some of the price fluctuations that have been occurring in the energy market since 1970. Right now, we're enjoying a fairly low-priced oil time, but that isn't going to last very long. Next slide. Transportation problems. Coming down here today, I had to cross the bridge into Brattleboro that was affected by Katrina. No, Irene, wrong woman. And it always strikes me crossing that bridge how fragile Vermont is. Because if that bridge had gone out in Irene completely, that would really cause a lot of transportation problems for the rest of the state, because that's a real bottleneck for state goods and services getting up my way, for one thing. We'd go hungry in Montpelier without the bridges down at this end of the state. Weather events. We're getting another one on Tuesday, I hear. Maybe we'll get as much as 18 inches of snow. That'd be fun for us skiers. Pandemics. That's another real concern. The Ebola scare only being the most recent of all of that. but certainly there are others that pose even more significant risks. I was looking at some charts this morning that show that even autism, which isn't exactly a pandemic kind of disease, but it's increasing exponentially around this country, and that's going to be having another real impact on our society's ability to continue to adapt. And one of the things I never forget to talk about is species extinction, because it's another one of those things that are on an exponential trajectory. We're watching more species be wiped out these days than it's like the 8th great extinction or something. I was reading in the New York Times this morning how Ebola's big concern is actually that it's wiping out the large gorilla populations. We've been worried about its effect on humans, but its effect on gorillas is even more significant. So those are just some of the shocks that we're looking forward to, right? Seeing them all on the list is a little bit depressing, so forgive me about that. But it's important that we develop resilient economic tools to deal with what's happening in the future. So we want to have a sustainable and resilient economic system, and that means we need to meet our needs without eroding the capacity and regeneration, like I was talking about before. And we want to maintain their critical functions, which is maintaining their ability to meet our needs, and structures even during disruptions and during setbacks. Next slide. So if you're looking at setting goals for your city, and you want to be sustainable and resilient, this is just a couple goals I decided to try and encourage you to think about. One is, how do you maximize health and happiness, individual and collective well-being? If that's one of the goals of your economy, the goals of your community, that will also help drive decisions in that direction, right? And fostering sustainable communities that have these capacities I spoke about before in all of these 5 systems, which are things like social cohesion and good governance and economic security, efficient services and infrastructure, and ecological integrity. These are the kinds of systems that we have when our cities and our communities are sustainable and resilient. Next slide. But what does this mean in terms of the economy? The economy, to a lot of us, is this mysterious large thing that we mostly feel powerless about, but nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, all of the people sitting in this room are taking an empowered stance toward the economy by inventing a new economic system here in Brattleboro that will help you through difficult times in the time trade. But if you want to define what a sustainable economy looks like in economic terms, it's one where the capital formation, all right, is sufficient to produce the assets that satisfy human needs without eroding their capital base. Capital, one of the things that defines capital, if you look it up in the dictionary or in some economic textbooks, it's an asset that has the ability to produce other assets. So when we talk about the capital that you have in your bank, which is financial capital, the thing that makes it capital is that it's producing a return for you in the bank while it sits there. Positive interest function of money, okay? Whoops. If we have sustainable capital, it means that a water system, for example, or the water balance in your local ecosystem will be continuing to produce the water that you need without eroding its ability and its health to continue to produce water. Okay, next slide. So financial capital is what we're all used to talking about, and that is this unique and rather problematic form of positive interest privately owned debt-based money that we all use all over the world. And it is the problem. I mean, it is the root of the issue, and that's why I work so hard on forming complementary currencies and time banks and public banks, because taking all of these steps to deal with diversifying the type of money we use is actually one of the most powerful leverage points in our economy because of the fact that it serves as the basis. But what are financial capital? Bank accounts, stocks, and bonds, right? Another click. What do you need for financial capital formation in our world? You need the rule of law, fundamentally. Believe me, I've worked in a lot of places where that wasn't in place. people are really struggling in places where you can't even agree on the rules of the game. You need stable institutions. Keep going. Connect. You need, actually, the reason that we have the system we have now is because in order to develop our industry, that financial capital needed to be able to be concentrated so that it could develop large industrial facilities. And so that's a function of the kind of financial capital we use. You also need social trust and connection with each other. You know, they don't call the banking system we've used for so many years bank and trust for nothing. Because it's actually the great myth of Western capitalism, right? That you put your money in the bank and it stays there. You know, it's not actually true. It is true on one hand, but you know, it enters the bank and then suddenly you've got this magical fractional reserve accounting system that allows it to be on deposit in that bank and on loan and on deposit in that bank and on loan and on deposit in that bank all at the same time. Magic. But it's also what makes our economy run, so you need to understand that. And you need to trust the system, right? We need stable value systems. You know, runaway inflation, runaway deflation, all of these things tend to undermine sustainable economies. Now, the currency we're using that provides the flow for all of this capital right now is, like I said, privately owned, positive interest, bank debt money. There are other types of currency. There's the currency used in time trade. And one of the insights I had when I was thinking about this was that currency is actually what produces the capital. Capital is the stock, currency is the flow. So if you're trying to develop a sustainable and resilient economy with the capacities in all of those systems we described, you actually need to think about currencies in all of those systems. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. Well, before I tell you, I'll tell you this first. Click, click, click. I'm used to having the clickers. so right now, the goals of the financial capital system, which is the dominant system in our economy, is to maximize financial profit and increase individual financial wealth and maximize productivity. And in order to do that, they want us to increase our individual consumption, and that implies extracting human and natural resources to do it. This is the growth imperative, growth-based economy. Next slide. It's also completely unsustainable. Click. The debt-based money system, as I've said, demands growth to survive. And there's a lot of reasons for that that are maybe a little too complex to talk about today. But there are a few simple ones. One is that all of the money we're using comes into existence through the issuance of debt. So every dollar in your pocket represents somebody else's debt. When they made that debt, when that person took out that mortgage or that business loan or that car loan or the government bond or whatever it was, they didn't make the interest at the same time to pay off the interest on that debt. Now, if all of you have seen your mortgage statements and how much you pay for your mortgage in interest by the end, in addition to the principal that you owe, you'll see that that's a whole lot of money when they're not issuing the interest at the same time as the debt. And that means that both built into our system is both systemic failure, because in order for some people to pay off their debt, other people have to fail at paying theirs. So, and also this inbred competition and the growth imperative. As long as they can keep the economy growing, everybody feels like they're kind of staying on top of things. As soon as it starts shrinking, though, all of that comes crashing down in the same exponential way it did to grow. And that causes huge problems and dislocations and poverty and winners and losers and all the kinds of things that we're suffering with right now. All right. Exponential unlimited growth, which is what our current monetary system demands, is the ideology of the cancer cell. And we don't actually have an exponentially increasing Earth to live on. You know, and that's a big problem. That's what makes it unsustainable. If we had a new Earth every day when we needed to get up in the morning and have more fossil fuels and more clean water and more all these things, you know, that'd be fine. We could keep the system going forever, but we actually don't have that. So we got to figure out a way to get around this growth imperative. And of course, the consolidation of wealth and power that all of this debt-based money causes also is why we have the 1%. I mean, if you're wondering where the 1% comes from, it isn't because, even though they'd like to think this, it isn't necessarily because they all work harder. It's also not because they're worth 23 million times what each of us are worth, because that's what the disparity is right now. You know, the average, the 90% in the United States, average salary, average income right now is around $23,000. But that very small 0.1% at the top, it's $23 million. Now, I'm sorry. You can be really smart and skilled and well qualified, but there's no way any economic system justifies that wide disparity in income. Next. So either the interest on money needs to be eliminated because the positive interest function is actually a big part of the problem, or we need to recapture it for the common good, and that's where public banking comes in. Because if all the banks were publicly held instead of privately held, then the interest payments that come back would be going back to the public and could be used for public purposes. Right now, all that interest payment adds up to an invisible tax on everything you buy and own, and it concentrates in the hand of fewer and fewer people. Next slide. I know, it's almost over. So, here's current banking practices. This is how state money flows. The state deposits their money in Wall Street and then they borrow it back to spend it for public purposes. Now, having a public bank means they would deposit the money in a state owned by the state of Vermont, and they would get it. The state of Vermont then would use their own money for their lending. Next slide. So this is how that would work. And it can create jobs, it can lower taxes. The profits from all that lending come back to the public instead of the private sector. In the Bank of North Dakota, where they have a state bank, the Bank of North Dakota has paid a $300 million dividend to the state of North Dakota over the last few years. They've actually debated getting rid of the property tax in North Dakota because of that revenue stream. Now that would be a nice debate to have, right? Now I just want to go quickly over the other types of capital we need to be forming if we really want a sustainable and resilient society. I'm not going to spend any time on this because I'm out of time, but I do want to introduce you to the idea that there are other currencies that would create other kinds of capital in addition to financial capital. And as I said, if you're interested in this, I'll be doing a 5-week course on it soon. So natural capital needs to have natural currencies. Just click through it. We need clean air, clean water, fertile soil, food, and there's no waste in nature. Everything gets reused. Next slide. So these are some of the natural capital currencies that have already been used somewhere in the world to try and use a currency that we would all use to exchange for goods and services to create natural capital instead of financial capital. Next slide. Human capital, another really important element of human dignity and human survival. Health, intelligence, strength, creativity, ethics, and character. We need to have our material needs met. We need a safe and healthy environment, healing arts, healthy families and relationships. These are all the kinds of prerequisites you need to have natural or human capital. Next slide. And social capital is another important element of our human society. And basically the result of social capital is that we can work together and take collective action on different projects. And these are the type of things you need for that. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom from oppression, trust and cooperation, all of these things. Now, building human and social capital, next slide. Oh, sorry, and institutional capital. This is another form of capital that we need to be able to run our societies. You need to have your shared values and your traditions and history. And it produces the rule of law, conflict management systems, security systems, markets. All of these things are important for our society. Next slide. Now, how do we build those? Well, you build them with different kinds of currencies. Time banks and care banks are two that have been very successful. Care Bank is an innovation that we developed with the Onion River Exchange with a grant from the Agency on Aging that was structured around elder care. So it's basically adapting a time bank for an elder care model. And there were a couple differences in time banking that we introduced with the Care Bank. And one was to make it more reliable by having people make a commitment of time when they sign up. And the other was to make it more like an insurance policy and a little less like a marketplace. An education currency now has been developed for Lithuania and Brazil. Wellness tokens are a currency that my colleague Bernard developed as a way to offset higher costs of health insurance and health care. And the ubiquitous civics. Civics can be used for anything, but you can use those also for health, well-being, and institutional capital. Next slide. And of course, built capital. Built capital is another one that we typically associate with that word. Roads, bridges, buildings, hospitals, infrastructure. It needs labor and action and materials and financial resources and markets to be built. And then, whoops, these currencies are, again, currencies that have been introduced already in other parts of the world that help build built capital. Next slide. So what I'm describing here is an ecosystem of currencies. So we wouldn't necessarily use one kind of instrument for everything we do. What we've done with, you can just click through them. What we've done with our current financial system is that we have a monoculture currency right now instead of an ecological currency. And that means that anytime anything goes wrong with the banks, the entire economy comes crashing down around us in much the same way as if we relied on one crop and a pest invaded that crop, we'd all go hungry because it's a monoculture crop. We have a monoculture currency when many others are possible to meet a wide variety of needs and build better, sustainable, more resilient communities. So anyway, if you're interested in learning more about that, again, we have this class coming up. I've written a book on it called Creating Wealth, Building Local Economies with Local Currencies with Bernard Liotard, who used to be a banker, a central banker in Belgium. And last slide. That's all I have to say. We could do one more song if you want.
Repeat the name of that book.
Repeat the name of the book.
Oh, sorry. The name of the book is Creating Wealth, Growing Local Economies with Local Currencies. It was put out by New Society Publishers, and I didn't bring any with me. That was really dumb. But you can get it online. There's also a free workbook that Bernard and I wrote that you can also download online called Community Currency. And just Google that name and you'll find it and download it.
Do you have a website?
Yes, the website is Global Community Initiatives for the work I do on sustainable communities in the economies, and also the Public Banking Institute for the work that we're doing on public banking. Global Community Initiatives. And that's just global-community.org, and then publicbankinginstitute.org is the website for the Institute. If you want to join the Institute and take our classes, go to publicbankinginstitute.org and become a member. Thanks.
Right, we're going to just take a quick 5-minute break for anything. We're sorry we don't have any pitchers of water, but you can take cups and fill them at the water fountain. But in 5 minutes, we'll get going again, okay?
And
Thanks.
if for any reason you have to leave, which I hope you don't, because we have such exciting things happening after our brief break, please put in your ballot for the election before you go. So it'll be out here, and you can put it in if you want your vote. Please stay.
And sign-ups to help out with the annual venture in the back now.
Who let me win?